Thank you, UNIMED, for organizing this session. My name is Josep Canals. I'm the Secretary General of MedCities. Now I'm going to share my screen. I hope you can see it well.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. MedCities is here, and I have the pleasure to have some welcome words to you, because we are the leaders of this consortium, this project, Urban Transports Community. But I want to thank to all of the members that have been involved in this project and doing this a very fruitful process that for 3 years from the last period, but also 3 years before this on the GoSam initiative. So thank you very much to all of you. Let me first introduce briefly what is MedCities and why we are the leaders. We are an association of 73 municipalities and union of municipalities from the 3 shores of the Mediterranean region, as you can see on the map, and we dedicate our efforts to help our members, which are local governments, for promoting sustainable development and fight climate change, and also giving some new opportunities in social economic aspects. We are a platform of projects. We like to help our members to achieve projects and funding, and to prepare these projects to be successful and to implement these European or international agendas into local projects, into our cities and villages. We are also a Mediterranean voice for those local authorities on the international fora and agenda. This is the final event, as I said, of 6 years of work by many people, many institutions. Thank you, all of you again. These are the institutions involved, as you can see here above on the last phase on this Indirect Damages urban transport community. As I said, we have been working on sustainable mobility, on low carbon mobility solutions for the Mediterranean region, for the whole region, with 12 replicable tools and solutions available for all cities and sustainable mobility. You can find these solutions and testimonies and experiences on the portal, the web, meturbantools.com, which is one of the Barcelona Convention, its protocols, flagship initiatives. So one of the decisions of all the states of the Barcelona Convention was to create this tool, this platform for having in it a lot of solutions regarding sustainable development, but specifically is the official portal to the official website for the urban transport community. The project, as you can see, has closely supported 8 replicating territories, trying to replicate contents that like the ones that there are inside here. One of the products of the GoSam and the UTC family project, the Handbook for Sustainable Mobility in the Mediterranean, is one of the tools that you can find in here, and some replicating territories of these initiatives we have been accompanying to them, and also over 30 activities across the Mediterranean area to build these capacities, to help local authorities and territories to increase their capacities to tackle climate change by reducing the impacts of the mobility and also adapting the mobility and the transports to this new reality that we are facing. One of the, for me, more important things is the final results of this, for me, tremendous work is summarized or not summarized, is condensed in these policy briefs, which encompasses 45 policy recommendations for city planners, national decision makers, and EU representatives. 4 of them. The first one was promoting soft mobility in the Mediterranean. The second one, tourism and the impacts of tourism in the creation of maybe not so well desired mobility in the Mediterranean tourist destinations. How we can create more sustainable tourist destinations regarding the mobility, both by land and sea and air. The third one is the e-mobility in the Mediterranean, some recommendations for that. And the last one that will be presented today is urban mobility adaptation to climate change, but also how we can mitigate the impacts of mobility in the Mediterranean region. All of these policy briefs are available to you. Is as I said, the result of this 3+3 years of work of all this community. All of this will be translated into Italian, Greek, French, English, Albanese, and Catalan. So you will find it here. But let me do some final reflections on all this work. I am one of the people that said that we are late, we are running late, but we also have time to turn things. So this is the time to act. The decade of implementation, the decade of restoration. So we need to act, and to act, we have here a lot of recommendations that can lead us to a more sustainable mobility sector. But we need to disseminate, we need to replicate, we need to scale up, we need to do things faster and at a bigger scale. So for that, decision makers, city planners must plan. So it's essential to plan the mobility and not to react by short-term policies that need to be done also, but we need to plan. All the cities need to plan, all the countries need to plan. So it's very important, is one of the main things said here, but we need to, and all of us, we need to be brave, and the decision makers need to be brave. Some decisions will not be so well understood because we'll be, for example, relocating some important infrastructure that, if not now, will need to be done in not so long future. Decision makers need to be brave, and for that we need to also scale up in communication. We need to speak clear and strong to the general public, for them to be aware that some changes need to be made in our way of moving, but also need to be understandable and empathetic on the decisions that some decision makers will have to do. So in this regard, I hear and would like to take the commitment, because now is not the final session of nothing, is the final step of one stage, but the commencement of another step, which is replicating, disseminating. And here I want to take also the commitment from MedCities that will be an actor replicating all these recommendations. For example, we are based in Catalonia. We will be paying visit to the Minister of Transports of Territory, in Catalonia, to share all this knowledge. And myself, I will be I've been invited and I asked to be invited, and I've been finally invited by the Parliament of Catalonia to present to all the parliamentary groups in Catalonia all these recommendations, for them to be aware of that and to decide if they can improve or create new policies regarding sustainable mobility. We will be doing this also with the Parliamentary Assembly of the Mediterranean, which is the organization that encompasses all the state parliaments of the Mediterranean region, and they are observer members of MedCities, and we will be sharing all this knowledge also with them. So I will want to send this message that we need now to replicate, we need to implement, we need to make this knowledge more knowable for everyone in the region. Thank you very much. Now I will want to congratulate and to thank and to tell you that today you will be, as I said, you will be seeing the main aspects of the final report, making the urban transport sector more resilient and less impactful in our region. And that's all for me. I would like now to give the floor to Margaretha Breil from the Mediterranean Center for Climate Change, that will be giving us the keynote speech, Impact of Climate Change on Cities and Their Transport Systems. Thank you very much, and I hope that this brief seminar will be very fruitful to you. Thank you for being here. Margaretha, please, the floor is yours.
Margaretha, sorry.
Oh, there I am. Thank you all for having me and for letting me participate in this, at least indirectly, in this very interesting project. I have followed some of your work phases and found it highly interesting. Just to say 2 words about who I am and who CMCC is. My name is Margaretha Breil. I'm working since more than 15 years on environmental economics, and more than 10 years on climate change, especially in urban areas. As from the origin, I'm an urban planner, trained in Germany, but living in Italy since more than 30 years. And I'm working since many years with CMCC, since its beginning actually, which is a network of Italian research institutions which are investigating all aspects of climate change. So in different locations, spread all across Italy, I have colleagues who are working on climatology, on oceanography, on agriculture, and the unit I am working in is made of environmental economists and working on economic impacts and valuation of policies. This is why me as an urban planner have a place in there. What I will try to give you now today is a short introduction on what actually colleagues of mine have produced, not only colleagues of mine, but global colleagues in terms of climatologists. So I am not a climatologist. Perhaps this helps you to understand me, to better explain what it's actually about, and make it easier to understand. But please stop me or don't hesitate making any question on what I'm saying, and to well understand what it is. So I'm working essentially with the material produced this year by the International Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, which you will all have heard about, in particular the working group dedicated to climate drivers and impacts. And one thing they have shown in their report is that there is an increasing density of studies and evidence on climate impacts in
Sorry, Margaretha, sorry to interrupt you.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
We see your yes, you should reduce that page there. Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, hope it's getting better now. So there is an increasing density of studies on climate impact. That means climate impacts are actually happening, although there might be something which is rather overseen because it's not so well studied. But the Mediterranean anyway appears as one of the areas with the highest density, as you can see from the black pixels of designing more than 100 studies for climate impacts. But I think starting just from the experience you are having today in Morocco, a very heavy rainfall event, as I understood, which made it difficult for you to join your workplace, is the best example of what climate impacts can look like more frequently, and what we need to take care of. So if we are looking for the drivers, and now it's not going forward anymore. Oops. There we are. As you already indicated in the invitation, the Mediterranean, for some complex climatological reasons, is a hotspot of climate change, which is heating up more than other parts of the globe. But it's also a hotspot because it's very densely inhabited, and it is very densely inhabited, in particular along the coastlines. But let's look a moment on what is actually happening and get some concepts clear. We are talking about a trend in global warming, and this is the surface temperature, the global mean surface temperature, which has been recorded until 2017. And according to different, what we call scenarios, is projected to grow in the future in a more or less intense way. So you can have the lines, the darkest one is the 8.5 scenario, which is the one which predicts the highest density of particulates of carbon CO2 in the atmosphere, and indicates a very a warming degree by 2100. So we are now at a bit more than 1 degree warmer than in the period between 1850 to 19. And what climatologists are trying to understand is where is the global temperature going to go, the mean temperature going to arrive if we are not doing anything. If we are not doing anything, the worst case scenario they have depicted is this one, which is designed by the dark line. There is a slightly better line, which is the scenario which goes, which acknowledge that some mitigation efforts are done. So the emission of additional CO2 into the atmosphere slowly goes down. And this is, for this scenario, they also depict something like the uncertainty range. That is, we are talking about a process which is increasingly better understood, but it is not a direct interaction between this quantity of carbon CO2 in the atmosphere equals that degree of warming. There is still some uncertainty, and this is what is indicated by this light red shade and by the gray shade, which indicate the range of uncertainties, how much the temperature could actually increase by the end of the century. It could be even under the 7.0 scenario, could arrive up to 5 degrees, but could also stop at 3 degrees. The same is for these better scenarios, the 1.9, which is very much connected to the Paris Agreement and to the hypothesis that all states do as they committed to do, stop having carbon emissions by 2050 at latest, and really start drastically reducing their emissions by 2030. I think you all know that, are aware that this is not very, how do you say, very, it can be expected that this is happening as we are seeing in this period of time. So the important concept is that we are guessing on how temperatures will develop. 2 degrees of warming already have very, very severe consequences. 1.5 is the goal for Paris Agreement, and even under 1.5, our climate is already changing, and we actually need to address these changes and be prepared for future and more drastic changes, which we do not all know exactly what they will be like, but we know the direction where it is going. Okay, So for the Mediterranean area, some of the parameters of change have been simulated for two different scenarios, which is one on the left, in the left column, the 1.5 degrees, which we just said is eventually not the most probable one, and oops, I think it's a 7.0 scenario, on the one on the right hand, which can mean that the intensity of heat waves by the end of the century will increase with annual days of extreme heat by the darkest color on the right hand side. But will increase in many parts around the Mediterranean. So this is one of the arguments we need to be prepared for. Extreme rain, as it is happening now, is actually foreseen to increase only in the northern part. The number of days are foreseen to increase only in the northern part of the Mediterranean, but it must be said that those events which are going to happen are bound to be more intense than those which had been happening in the past, because with the water heating up, the water of the Mediterranean Sea, there is more energy and more humidity to go into the atmosphere and to condense into clouds, and then resulting in cloudbursts and very intense downpours. So even if the overall tendency might go down, what the brown dots are indicating, those which are coming down are might be more intense. What I did not show now, because it's not so relevant for transport, is the overall rain quantities. These are going to decrease for the whole Mediterranean basin. Last aspect, and if you remember the number of dots along the coastline, and remember what the Mediterranean coastlines are made of, you can see that for the end of the century, there might be increases in sea level rise, especially in relative sea level rise in some areas up to 70 centimeters, or other scenarios, or even talk about 1 meter. And I live in Venice, like some of you living in perhaps in Alexandria or in the Bay of Gabes. These are the most vulnerable, among the most vulnerable areas of the region. Okay, going ahead then, what does that mean for impacts of transport, impacts on the urban transport system? We need to remember, and I think you know that better than me, I'm not a transport expert. Transport is not a homogeneous fact, so a homogeneous system, but made of very different elements. Streets, it's rail-bound, it's motorized or not, it's underground in parts, it's on the surface, it can also be elevated. Only think of bridges, which are can be quite fragile under different climate events. And they are also made of routes and places for exchange, for not only for storage, but if you think only about passengers, where they wait, how they get to transport stops, or how they do their transport, they manage their transport by themselves. And different impacts can also come together onto the system. So we are not now looking at them in a separate way to get some indications on mechanisms, but many of the mechanisms can interact either over a short time, first heat and then downpour, or in the same moment, downpour and wind, or coastal flooding and wind. So if we start with heat wave, these are the ones which will have the highest impact on the Mediterranean. With regards to the transport system, the impact on bituminous and concrete surfaces is quite relevant, as these deform in different ways and need a lot of repair. As long as the streets are considered, this may be done. But if you're thinking about soft ways of mobility, as walking and cycling, these holes in the street and in the pedestrian areas and on cycle paths are can be rather dangerous, and so prevent also people from cycling or walking because it's not very comfortable. The other aspect is rail buckling, which is happening. It is reported very much from the northern part of Europe. I understand that giving the use of the fact that the system is already exposed to higher temperatures, this effect may not be that important in the Mediterranean, but it still is, and can be more relevant, which slows down or even interrupts traffic lines. And the comfort for passengers and pedestrians is reduced where in the places where they are waiting for. I didn't find a good image for a bus stop which is heating so much up. So the idea from China to have dust, water sprayed around, or from Southeast Asia to have from South Africa to have a green roof on the top of the bus stop station is one idea. Yes? Pardon?
Sorry, other 2 minutes we are.
I can't hear you well.
Please, 2 minutes.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
2 more minutes.
Okay, I rush up. Extreme rain, what you're seeing is not only the quantity of water in the which is flooding the street, but it's also affecting other artifacts around the streets or bridges, either by water, by erosion, or by debris. And it brings a lot of work afterwards for cleaning up, etc. And for underground lines, it needs they can be interrupted or even a longer time than normal streets. And yeah, next one. Coastal flooding, obviously, many transport lines are along the coast, and the coastlines are key for transport uses. In this context, it needs to be recorded that the normal sea level is not the highest one which can be reached under a storm surge. So if the mean sea level is rising by 70 centimeters, the level of storm surge will pile up in proportion to that by another 70 centimeters. So it can come not only for single temporary floodings, but also to overtopping and to saltwater intrusion into buildings which are structural buildings and elements of transport systems, and corrosion, etc. This is, I found some numbers colleagues of mine have produced with regards to actual costs from direct damages. In the actual period, most of damages are due to flood and wind, but according to their for projections already in the 50s, 95% of the damages will be on the transport system, will be on due to heat. and the transport system will increase also in importance of the overall amount on critical infrastructures in what the share of damages is, which is the left side, the orange bar on the left-hand side graph. In addition to that, the indirect economic damages due to interruption of communication, people are coming late to work or to important webinars as today. The loss of clients in public transport is very much related also to mitigation issues, because if public transport is too hot, too uncomfortable, it is you're waiting such a long time under the sun, etc. It compromises the mitigation goals of making urban transport more efficient and less carbon intensive. And obviously it has health impacts. Okay, so thank you. This was some lines of what I wanted to show you today. And I know that I am aware of the policy brief, and this has already taken up some consequences of what we indicated here and how they can be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaretha. Now we leave the floor to and we can follow up. You cannot hear me. Can you hear me? Sorry.
Okay.
Thank you, Margaretha. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Margaretha. And we now are giving the floor to Marco, which will be a bit shorter, and we can move on and go deep in the conversation after the session with Moroccan professor and Leila. Thank you, Marco. The floor is yours.
Good morning, everybody. Today, contrary to the program, I'm going to present the policy brief we developed in place of my colleague Fabio Tomasi, who had a last-minute problem. Sorry for the inconvenience. In this policy brief, we focus on urban mobility adaptation to climate change. Why we decided to focus on this topic? Because often mobility plans, like sustainable urban mobility plans, mainly focus on mitigation actions. Focus on preventing or limiting climate change effect by reducing greenhouse gases emissions. And no doubt this is the priority, but we must be aware that climate change is already affecting us. We are suffering from climate change, already suffering from climate change impacts, because it's affecting our urban areas, disrupting mobility infrastructures and services. Therefore, we should develop resilient mobility plans in order to guarantee the possibility to move in urban environments in these changing conditions. We focused on urban mobility in its whole, so we considered all the different modes of transport, from active mobility to private mobility, public transport system, and sharing mobility, which is in the middle, which stays in the middle of the two previous modes. We considered all aspects of mobility, so people, which can be users, riders, but drivers and workers of the mobility sector. We considered the physical assets, so infrastructures and vehicles, but we didn't forget the service, so the operation, the provision of the service. Since the climate change has an impact on all aspects of our lives, so affects different sectors, we decided to adopt a multidisciplinary approach. So we started, of course, from the review of existing scientific literature, but then we decided to involve a group of interdisciplinary group of experts from different fields. Margaretha was involved in this work as well. And so we involved the climatologists, urban planners, mobility and transport experts, economists, and a medical doctor in order to consider the impact of climate change on public health as well. And we held 3 interactive multidisciplinary workshops. In the first one, the climatologists and urban planners made a topic introduction and helped to and all the participants defined the most significant climate impacts on the Mediterranean area with a specific focus on urban areas, urban environments. In the second, we discussed on the selected climate impacts, the one which has the biggest, which are most relevant to the urban environment and the mobility. And in the third meeting, we tried to find out some possible solutions. The climate change impacts we considered we decided to consider are sea level rise, floods, heavy precipitation, extreme winds, wildfires, and heat waves. The structure of the policy brief is structured with a general introduction focusing on climate change impacts on Mediterranean urban environments. And then you can find some fact sheets, each one related to one climate change impact, a specific climate change impact. And we consider some, we indicate some related climate change impacts, because some often 2 or more climate change impacts occur at the same time. For example, when you have medicanes, which are Mediterranean hurricanes, you have both heavy precipitations and extreme winds, and the situation worsen, of course. Investing on adaptation measure is necessary. The aim of this policy brief is to raise awareness mainly in decision makers, policy makers, and planners, urban planners, because the awareness raising is very important, and it is important that experts of specific fields have the bigger picture. This is why we opted for a multidisciplinary approach. We decided to try to break the silos. And so decision makers tend to invest in proposals that will generate short-term results. But with climate change, this is not possible because the economic returns from investments made to adapt the city to climate change are visible only in the long term, and in the best situation, they are not visible at all, because this means that the measures are effective and they avoid the potential damages. And the lack of financial resources and poor planning capacity are all often affecting the effective implementation of solutions to address the implications posed by climate change on transport infrastructure. This is a big problem. The key policy recommendations we make are, first of all, to conduct a thorough vulnerability assessment to understand the climate risks of a specific territory, of a specific city, both currently and in the long term. Then you must incorporate the climate risk into planning, both urban and mobility planning and in legislation at the local level. But not only at the local, because in the policy brief, you will find different recommendations to different level, local, regional, national, or in our case, at the EU level, or at a higher than state level. And then based on the risk assessment, different adaptation options should be identified. There's not one recipe fits all. This option must be prioritized and then implemented. Awareness raising, as I already stressed, is very, very important, and as well as early warning systems are highly effective and cost efficient in relation to most critical hazards. You have two possible ways, two different type of measure, hard and soft measures, and warning system, for example, are soft measures. Hard measures are infrastructures to adapt to climate change, like green infrastructures. So consider multifunctionality of infrastructures. For example, green infrastructures measures are effective in addressing high temperatures and flooding in cities, but they provide services to the citizens, like parks and leisure spaces for leisure time.
Sorry, Marco.
Yeah.
2 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, but when considering this, you must consider water needs as well. And to conclude, adaptation measures go hand in hand with mitigation measures. Some more recommendations: implement actions to maintain, manage, strengthen, and protect infrastructure from climate damage by planning, not considering past conditions, but present and future conditions, because infrastructures have a long lifetime. And implement technological innovation. Renovate or relocate all infrastructures that could be severely damaged in case of climatic impacts. Adopt nature-based solutions to reduce vulnerability of urban areas and transport infrastructures. Improve real-time traffic informations to provide resilience, investing in travel planning devices and tool to help transport sector to react promptly to extreme climatic events. Promote a flexible, resilient, and multimodal urban transport structures that introduce redundancy and gives the possibility to easily find and narrow transport options in case one becomes unusable due to climatic impacts. Here you can see some pages of the policy brief, and you can find it on the page on the website of the Urban Transport Project, together with the other three policy briefs Josep presented at the beginning. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you, Marco. Now we leave the floor to Dr. Scalisi. Thank you.
Thank you, Emilia. Thank you very much. And this is not my office. As you can see, I am in outdoor situation and hosted by the University of Barcelona, where we have today another conference in the framework of inclusion of migrants and refugees, but generally speaking, to talk about the inclusion in the universities. Let me say, first of all, a big thanks to MedCities for the coordination activity that they did in the last years for this important project on urban transport sustainability, which is a topic extremely important for all of us in our daily life, I have to say. But the most important thing in my perspective is that is a topic that is in some way related to a common priority once we look at the Mediterranean region. I mean, not only the European Mediterranean side and not only the Southern Mediterranean side. The Interreg Med projects, as you know, are very interesting for several issues. First of all, because we put in common the authority, I mean, not UNIMED, but the Interreg Med authority in this program, try to put in common on some important priorities in the European Mediterranean region, local authorities, NGOs, universities, research institutions, to try to find solution, starting from an important model of cooperation, which is partnership. The idea is that no one has the solution for our common problems, but only working together, we can try to identify solution and try to use this solution that we will identify. And our role in such project is also to transfer the results of this initiative also to our Southern Mediterranean partners and to our Southern Mediterranean countries. And this is the main results of this event of today. After listening our keynote speakers, thanks Margaretha and Marco for your contribution, the main idea is to launch and to improve conversation among local actors and universities, in our case, to try to copy and paste in some way this model also to Southern Mediterranean countries. All of us, we know how weak the local authorities in Southern Mediterranean countries. They don't have the same power, the same autonomy, the same means, the same budget in that our European local authorities have. In some way, we have also lack of autonomy of universities in our region, but our role is not to complain, but also to try to invite all these actors to work together and to, why not, to address potential solution to our policymakers at national level, at local level, at international level. Because again, we are discussing about topics that are not related to one country, but to several, to all of us, to all our region, to try to transfer this conversation from the Euro-Mediterranean dimension to the Southern Mediterranean dimension. We invited today several actors. At the moment, we are just 2 on the 4 speakers that we invited. I don't know if they will join, but first of all, I thank Leila Youssef, Senior Urban Specialist and Assistant Director of International Projects and Program Units at the Mobility Department of Greater Irbid Municipality in Jordan. I have been to Irbid several years ago, and it was a very amazing experiences for me. And also we have our friend and colleague, Professor Adil Salih from Abdel Malek El Saadi University from Morocco, which is one of our partner and coordinator of the UNIMED subnetwork on climate change. In the last years, just to conclude my intervention, in UNIMED network, as you know, we have 150 universities from 24 countries. The green dimension, the sustainability dimension is becoming day after days, years after years, more important than before. We have a lot of projects at the moment. We have a lot of initiative under this important chapter. And recently, we have been to the COP27 in the Mediterranean pavilion organized by the Union for Mediterranean with many other actors. This means that this dimension, sustainability, green dimension, is extremely important for all of us. And I thank all of you for the work that we are doing. And I leave now Leila to introduce her work in Jordan. Thank you very much. Unfortunately, I can't stay with you because we are a little late and I have now to move to my session. Thank you very much, and I wish you a successful continuation for this webinar.
Thank you, Marcello. Please, Leila, the floor is yours.
Yes, so good morning, and thank you very much for this opportunity. I will elaborate the idea of urban mobility adaptation to climate change based in the document Urban Mobility Adaptation to Climate Change. And so firstly, I would like to just introduce myself. I'm urban planner, GIS analyst, and I elaborate some project of urban mobility at our city municipality. Related to the document Urban Mobility Adaptation to Climate Change, it's very important to say that I feel I go through this document, and which is very considered a strength point is the methodology that adopted to elaborate this document where we can find very interesting information. But let me first start with the idea that was elaborated by Gianfrancesco Caniggia, which is Italian theoretician. He elaborated the idea of the morphological, based on the morphological approach of the city and territory, and he considered that the city as built environment, and we go through the process. When we go through the process of formation and transformation of this built environment, we can understand the past and the present and the future. And based in this, effectively, we can propose the scenario of growth of our city, taking in consideration the population, the transportation, and different indicators in the city. So I believe that what we propose as adaptation measures in this document, if we understand the past and the present, we can take in consideration what we can propose in the future. So when we talk about action and the old infrastructure and the scenario and natural-based solution, traffic information system, urban transport structure, the regulation of the infrastructure and the restoration of places affected by climate alteration. As adaptation measures, we need to understand how the process of evolution of the city, like this, we can be very well propose different action. We can classify our infrastructure, the old, the new. We can know exactly where we will elaborate our new infrastructure. The natural-based solution also be based in this lecture reading of this process of formation, transformation of our city can be elaborated. We can also understand and building more data about traffic information, how with the time and the space also this information have evolution, and we can propose the future. Going to propose also a multi-model of urban transport structure is very important when we understand that we have different area in our city between urban or rural. So all those points can be very well adapted if we go through the concept of process of transformation, formation and transformation of the city. And like this, we can be sure that what we adopt as action or other point are in the continuity of the city, the process of formation of our city. I consider as weakness in general that when we have this vision of a global and not related to the local, we cannot achieve our goals. And for this, we cannot give the policymaker any opportunity to take the best decision. I believe it's very important to have general vision, but also to develop the concept or the element at the local level. How we can do this? I propose that we can go through global to local using geodatabase which can contain with the information through geographic information system. This can give policymakers the opportunity to making the better decision with the GIS. Policymaker, we can prepare thematic maps based in the data that you have proposed in the document, urban mobility adaptation to climate change, also remote sensing, and we can, based in this, elaborate climate change risk maps, and we can achieve some adaptation way with a concrete and specific based in the built environment or at the local level. When we talk about the challenge at the local level, and the second part of the best practice, I will say that the challenge at the local level, as I said, we have to understand very well our local level. What is elaborate in this document as assessment for city urban mobility context, how we can introduce the level of urban planning, and we can propose urban mobility plan, master plan for the city. The financial issue for local level through the budget specific for the municipality, or can help more better the decision makers to get the best decision concerning the evolution of the concept of urban mobility and the adaptation to climate change, and how we can elaborate more the green infrastructure, and to see how we, with this geodatabase, we can, as adaptation, propose the green infrastructure. Also the use of low carbon mode of transport, which is a very important level of the adaptation to climate change. As example, we have at the level of our municipality, for example, start to elaborate this with the design, one of our project with MedCities, the design and the planning of low carbon mobility scenario through public consultation. We consider the, when we talk, you have elaborate also as a key message for policymaker, the awareness, one of important element, also the awareness of the local community about the climate change, how they can contribute also through the urban mobility to be integrated in this adaptation. So the project, in this project, we have go through different steps. Firstly, the planning for and concept planning for low carbon mobility. We have, for the first time, we have elaborate in our municipality a clear methodology to do the analysis and the field work. We have been in contact with the municipality, Thessaloniki municipality in Greece. The example was very excellent. The very important point that we have adopted the system or the analysis or the methodology, but at the local level of our city. We have been in contact. We have also shared in through this work a different example of a low carbon mobility solution. The challenge was how we can integrate those example or solution at our local level. And which was very interesting element through this analysis, that we have elaborated toolkits for low carbon mobility planning and participation. This study was for part of our city, and we start now to reflect this with this study at the level of all our city to elaborate urban low carbon mobility planning. And then I found the opportunity through this document to have another idea to go through this project. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Leila. I will now leave the floor to Professor Adil Sali from the Moroccan University of Abdel Malik Study, and to provide also from his side some insight and critical aspects perhaps that he has noticed in this policy brief. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you, Emilia. Good morning, everybody. With regard to the report, I think this is a good report with clear key messages and a comprehensive analysis of the different impacts of climate change at the local, national, and regional levels. The impacts of each driver are well described with the indication of potential measures of adaptation and some broad solutions. So I think the report is an excellent output, which can be of great support to the decision-making process to improve the resilience and to orient upcoming policies and planning. And as Will said in the key messages, one of the real constraints to adapt to climate change and improve resilience is the lack of means. And I'm not talking only about financial ones, but also human resources in some cases. And this lack of means, together with the poor planning capacity, are the causes of ineffective implementation, which consequently do not allow to avoid repetitive damages and losses. So the problem arises with the constraints of implementation. And it is true that in South Mediterranean countries, there is sometimes, and in some cities, this lack of financial resources, which inhibits implementation. And this happens also in the rural areas and in the peripheral cities and municipalities near big metropolis. But I don't think that this is the main problem, because there is other ones like, well, I don't think that there is a gap of knowledge in the South Mediterranean countries with regard to the impacts of climate change and how to cope with them. There is rather a problem of perception, and the mechanisms of communicating between different stakeholders with different knowledge backgrounds and different perspectives and different interests. This is where the problem is. So this is not about knowing what to do and how to do it. Rather, there is a problem of communicating, and I'm talking about leaders, about scientists, and about civil society. I can give the example of soil erosion mitigation here in Morocco and in many Maghreb countries, in Spain also, and in other Mediterranean countries. There are huge initiatives and programs that fail at the end because of the lack of coordination, of coordinated actions, and the implication of different divisions from different administrations, which conflict with local interests of local actors and stakeholders. So there is a problem of financial resources. This is true. There is another problem of good perception of the measures, and also the collaborative coordination and co-creation of local adapted actions. The other problem, as far as I know, and maybe the big one, is the willpower. Marco and Juan said, and I joined them, I fully agree with them, that sometimes what stops good implementation is the willingness of some decision makers who avoid the solutions, and even if these solutions are scientifically good and cost effective, they avoid this because the solutions are not popular or are not prioritized. And I participated in many preparation of many local and regional plan as experts. And I can say that the first time I was there, I was surprised because many elected were against our orientations, and that was only because they said that they give their word to citizens to build new infrastructure, where we as scientists, as experts, say that they should not, but they forced the modification of the plan only because they gave the word prior to the process of preparing the plans. There is another problem. Instead of planning, we are assisting to a kind of special rectification. I mean, in Tangier metropolis, for example, which is 100 kilometers from where I am here in Morocco, in northern Morocco, there is this management plan of the big metropolis of Tangier, which was prepared for over 6 years, revised many times for objections by local stakeholders and civil society. And it was not a problem. This is not the problem. The problem is that once there is a filtration of a draft of the revised version of the metropolis of Tangier, of the plan of the metropolis during the couple of months before the validation of the plan, we observe new and controlled infrastructure construction in areas where this kind of infrastructure shouldn't be there. So it should be prohibited, which means that there is an anticipation of uncontrolled construction that afterwards makes any planification unrealistic and outdated. And directly after the validation of the plan, we find out that we need to prepare a new plan to correct the established one. With this in mind, that and with what Marcelo well said, we cannot make a copy-paste of good plans already established in Europe or in other cities and metropolises here in Southern Mediterranean. But we need to co-create with local partners and with stakeholders to try to involve them, because otherwise we will achieve no sustainable solutions. There is this good point in the report of improving local education. I'm fully with the idea, but I think that training and raising awareness will not be enough. I think that we need to create kind of a culture slowly with time, introduce this adaptation and mitigation measures, in the know-how, not only the know why, but the know-how, how to act, actions, I mean, within the education system to try to have finally, within some years, a society which really understands this, with leaders who have the courage, like Joseph said, to implement good solutions, even if these solutions are not well received by society. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Sali, for this important reflection that involves education and the new being aware of what we are, all of us, facing, including the problem of some authorities not to be willing to adopt some solution because they can be unpopular. Having said that, and not having here with us, unfortunately, and for unforeseen reason, the Vice Mayor of the city of Tetuan, nor even the professor from the University of Yarmouk, I will want to share with you some comments and questions that the participants have addressed to the speaker. From Mohammed Aziz Sahid, he said that I think we need to identify some indicator that climate is changing. I don't know if there is some comment from the speaker on this point. From Vincent Hissa, he was saying that which can be an adaptive mechanism from project cooperation with southern Mediterranean countries. I don't know if Margaretha, Marco, or Adil or Leila want to address this comment to this question.
Well, I could understand. I could reply to the first one. There are some indicators. For example, the temperature, the temperature trends. or precipitation trends or drought. We didn't consider in our reports because the impact on urban mobility was not so relevant. Maybe it was an indirect has an indirect impact on urban mobility. For example, drought, so fewer water availability could impact green infrastructures, because you need to water green areas in summer during dry periods. Otherwise, you lose the water retention ability of green areas to contrast heavy precipitation and flooding. But if you move towards electric mobility, so low carbon, you need to produce electricity from renewable sources. You cannot move the problem from the from the vehicle to the plant which produce electricity. So, for example, in Italy, we have a lot of hydroelectric production of electricity, and if you don't have water, you cannot produce electricity. But other type of plants, thermal plants, which produce electricity, need cooling. So you have an impact on electricity production as well. And if your transport system is electrical, you don't have enough electricity to power your vehicles. So we have some indicators. The frequency of the occurrence of extreme weather events is an indicator as well.
Thank you, Marco. Yes, please, Margaretha.
Yes, so the indicators are clearly there, and every National Meteorological Center should be able to trace the changes of mean temperature, the frequency of extraordinary high temperature events, the duration of heat waves, and so on. These are all recorded, and there is a complete agreement on that this trend is going upward in all countries. So there is no doubt about that. You just need to look into the records. The one point I did not underline is that this system of change is slowly taking up speed, in particular with regards to sea level rise, but also with regards to other impacts from rising temperatures. This is going to be more impactful in the second half of the century. You remember the curves which are slightly going up, rising, and becoming steeper in the second half of the century, because the whole system is accumulating energy and being more impactful. So even what now are very small changes can translate in rather important changes in the next future, especially after 2050. And with this in mind, something which was said at the very beginning is important. When you're thinking about new or transforming your transport system, you have some time, because the worst of the impacts is bound to come only perhaps in the second half of the century. But you should well use this time and have these future changes in mind when you start putting hands on it now, and be ready to react on more intense changes and more heavy changes in later phases. So being adaptive in this sense of the word of planning, not all in one cast in stone one and being ready now for the end of the century, but working more stepwise and keeping in mind, perhaps, which is more important, that you need to prepare for different climate.
Thank you, Margaretha. I just want to remind all the participants that the meeting has been recorded, so we will provide the record afterward. And also, many participants are asking if we can share the presentation done. I think I can confirm to all of them that yes, we can. And yes, Leila, please.
It's just a question to go through the discussion. As Mr. Adil Saleh, he said that in the Moroccan country or the Mediterranean city, we have very interesting city with a specific built environment. And when in those cities, we see how the human have made this combination between the built environment, the city, and the climate change. And we have really very interesting example. My question is also with Margaretha, that we think, can we go through those built environment, those city? We have a specific courtyard house, we have the so close street, we have some location for the urban activity in the city. Can we go through those and take the example and study those city as a specific built environment, and to learn today how we can elaborate the sustainability, the adaptation for climate change? Also, if we talk about urban mobility, because urban mobility is one element of global issue, of global reflection to make the planning for our city. So my question: can we go through those cities and take the good example, the experience of how they have built this adaptation between the climate change and the city as the shape of the city? Thank you.
Excellent. We just talked about that before the beginning of the webinar. This is actually, you will be aware, being an urban planner, that urban planning has been developed in a completely different climate now. It starts from Central and Northern Europe, where sunlight was a rather rare good and ensured health of people. So especially in my country, I was born in Germany, children were ill because they did not receive enough sun, because their dwellings were so dark and there was not enough sunlight in the streets. And so the paradigm of modern urban planning to have sunlight everywhere is something which is making the cities more and more unbearable, so you can't live there anymore. Whereas the cities of the southern part of the Mediterranean, and to a certain extent also in the northern part of the Mediterranean, are built in a way to prevent from insulation, to provide shade, because already temperatures were not, before climate change, were too high to do normal activities, and were bound to cause harm to human health. So from the physical morphological point of view, so how the cities were built with very straight streets and where the sun does not arrive to the ground, and so the walls of the buildings are shaded and buildings do not heat up, and building materials were used which are better isolating than concrete and metal is doing. These are, of course, elements which are important and should inspire a new way of building. What I'm a bit more perplexed about is this dimension of public transport, as these cities were not made for so many people moving every day around in the city for in such big quantities. So the transport system which was traditionally used in the cities is not adapted to have the same way of living. as you are expecting to have it now, to go everybody to live in the periphery and go into the center for work or for shopping and so on. So this would require will require some rethinking about how mobility is managed in a city. Eventually to get away from mass transport and to get away in any case from individual car-based transport. So partly yes, and partly I don't see a real hook in traditional forms to manage the problem.
I'm sorry, I'm coming to share in this context a question that come from Abdelkader Abdullah, and he was asking, what about working remotely, so digitalization? Don't you think it can contribute significantly reducing mobility effects on climate?
Yes, of course it does. It does reduce, but we are all so happy to go back to the office, at least sometimes, not the whole week. It can somehow reduce mobility, yes, but mobility is also transport of goods, and all these things need to be rethought in a different way if cities should change shape, as Leila was suggesting. And I really agree very much that this would be the most sustainable way.
Thank you. Yes, please, Marco or Leila.
Okay, first Leila.
Just I want to say to Margaretha that the relation between the center and the periphery of the city, we can understand it and control and have this control to the urban fabric. If we understand very well the different elements that compose our urban fabric, we can understand very well this relation and know exactly how we propose the growth of our city. And I can share with you very important document that can give you clear idea about this point. When Abdelkader said that digitalization, I agree with you. We need this today. It's tools that he can facilitate the decision to the policymaker to take the best decision. And the question is how we can have this clear philosophy or idea to build our geodatabase. Like this, we can elaborate more thematic map, and we can have a clear discussion to know exactly the indicator based on we can make more adaptation, urban mobility adaptation to climate change. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, Marco.
Yeah, I would add that remote working for tasks which are possible to be completed remotely is a measure of mobility management. So you can avoid some trips, but I want to point out that especially in Italy, during COVID-19 pandemics, we were forced in lockdown, and so we were forced to work from home, and the movements related to leisure time exploded. So we couldn't move for work because we work from home, but we need to move, to go outside even in leisure time. We are social animals, so we need contact, we need relations. I think it should be a balance, and it should be a possibility. You cannot impose to work remotely, but I think raising awareness once more, and promoting more than raising awareness, maybe promoting change in mindset, promoting culture, making people understand the importance of avoiding an action, so going to work, could help, and they must choose. So a good balance, some days in presence and some days to work remotely if you can, is a good compromise, I think.
Yeah, but also the shape of the city, as Leila indicated already. If the periphery is only made for sleeping and all fun is in the city center, this obviously leads to a huge transport need. If there are loads of models for decentralizing the city, and as also a means of reducing transport requests.
Yeah, we have we have two problems: reduction the number of the travels and reduce the length of travels.
Yes. Okay. I'm not sure if remotely working will reduce the problem, because we are not moving only to work. We are moving to the every single thing in our lives. So it is about the way of life, of modern life, that we have to change. And the problem, I think, is the attractiveness of the big cities, which push people to move there to work, to live, to do their life with the industrialization of big cities, and this commerce, tourism, and this kind of activity. With all this attractiveness, population is growing within the cities, and the density also. So I think we cannot change this. We can try to mitigate, to reduce a little bit this kind of problem, but not resolving the problem if we don't change our way of life. I consider this a key point of the solution.
Yeah, I think a return to the traditional Medina cannot be the way, because it cannot be proposed considering what cities are looking like, actually. But it must be more about taking up elements of that. And one is decentralization, and another one is building materials and the importance of shade, recognizing the importance of shade rather than being exposed to sunlight, as is mentioned in the Charta 10 of the 1920s or 30s, or when it was, from Le Corbusier and his campaign. So rethinking modern architecture is another element.
Yes, please, Leila. And I just want to add that I would also invite Dr. Nancy if you want to add something before the conclusion. But now, yes, the floor is yours.
Yes, just I want to add just one word, is that when we are looking to the built environment as a process of formation and transformation, and we can understand the past, the present, the future, we are looking to the continuity in the urban fabric. We don't, and the indicator that at the level of the building, at the urban fabric, they can keep the continuity in the building, the shape of our city. I believe that the concept is the continuity to keep this adaptation to climate change at the different level. I don't agree very well with the use of the word that we change our way of to see the city, but the key word is that how we can keep the continuity in our built environment. And thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Leila. Margaretha?
Yeah, just very quickly, are you really sure that, I don't know your city, sorry, I've never been there. But is there a continuity from from a pre-modern to a modern phase of the city, or has there already been a change? In this sense, I would question the possibility of have a continuity and the need for rethinking urban growth is managed.
In my city and the city where I have been living before, there is no continuity but there is a certain continuity in the different phase of evolution of the city, but not all the process of the formation of the city, there is continuity. But somewhere when you study the city, you can understand there is continuity, and you can understand the parameter of the continuity. And I can share with you different documents about this. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, the speakers, for their dynamization of the conversation, and also to our participants. I saw that also in the chat have been shared links about research of our participants, so I will make sure that all this information will be shared also among the speakers. I want to ask if Joseph is going to add something in this very end of our meeting before going toward the closing. No, okay, so from Joseph, nothing. Before leaving you, I want also to thank our translator today that has allowed also French speaking to follow the webinar. Thank you, Claudia. And as said, the meeting has been recorded and it will be shared, as well as some resources shared by the participants and also the presentation from the speaker. Thank you, everybody, for having been part of this intense and dynamic discussion. It is a never-ending issue. So we will continue to talk about this. Thank you and have a nice day, everybody. Bye.